one asked me if I want to fund an escrow for the whole job or a partial amount. Funding escrow means I'm taking money from my payment method, which let's say I added my bank account. So I'm taking that $250, or I'm taking the whole $1,200, and I'm depositing it into an escrow fund for that milestone or for the whole job. And I can select. I can choose to just do that first milestone. So let's say I just fund $200. That does not mean that Nico can go in and withdraw that money. He's not getting paid yet. But Nico sees that that milestone has been funded with escrow. It has money there. Funding is in place, and he can start work. So that job gets awarded to Nico. Tomorrow, he uploads the file, and he says, this milestone is complete. I'm ready to get paid. Now, this is where your payment protection as a client comes in. You do not release that $200 escrow payment until you have received the work and approved it. So if I go to download that file, I open it up and I see that he drew a cat instead of a dog. Well, I don't release the $200, then I send him a note or I call him and I say, hey, Nico, I think you uploaded the wrong file. Can you deliver it again? And I wait until he sends the right file, uploads the right file, before I release that $200 escrow payment to him. And then I go and fund the next one. That's where your payment protection comes in. You fund escrow first. You only release escrow after you have received the work and approved it. And then you go and fund the next milestone. It's a great way to make sure that funding flows through Upwork, that you're staying protected. You're never sharing your financial account information with a freelancer. You're never paying them directly, hoping that you're going to get the work delivered. You're paying through escrow, and you're only releasing escrow after you have received work that you approve. On hourly jobs, we call it hourly payment protection. So the way this works is, let's say I post my job and I say I want to hire someone to do some project management work for me for about 15 to 20 hours a week. I interview some freelancers and I end up talking to Shannon. Shannon says, yep, I'm available for 20 hours a week and I can do this at $30 an hour. So the first step is to agree to those final terms. I'm saying, okay, Shannon, I'm agreeing to pay you $30 an hour, and I'm agreeing that I will automatically be charged up to 15 hours a week. Now you say, well, what if, the first week we're just going to do some training? It's going to be 10 hours. That's okay. You don't need to. Shannon doesn't need to charge 15 hours. If she's only working 10, she should be only charging 10. And then as you guys get busy, if she needs to charge some more, if she needs to charge 20 hours, well, she needs to make sure that she checks in with you ahead of time so that she can add that time afterwards. So we agreed 15 hours at $30 an hour. And that's what I'm going to be doing on the contract. I'm going to be putting those final terms in and awarding that job to Shannon. Now the next step is really important for Shannon, the freelancer, and that is she needs to download the desktop app to her computer, because that's what she's going to be using to track her time. The desktop app is basically like a time card feature. What it does is it captures screenshots of Shannon's computer while she's working. So she needs to start it when she starts working on my job. It's capturing screenshots every hour, and it's uploading those screenshots to her work diary, which is like a timesheet. At the end of the week, that time gets automatically charged to my payment method. But here's where my payment protection comes in. I then have another 5 days to review that timesheet and dispute any time if it wasn't spent on the job. So if I look at Shannon's timesheet and I see that last Tuesday she spent 30 minutes on her Facebook account, well, I can just dispute that time and it goes away and pay for it. Now, this is not a replacement for quality of work. This is not meant to be the work itself. Like in my case, the freelancers that I have who work on hourly contracts, they're sending me reports on the stuff that they're doing. They're sending me emails. I'm seeing them respond to people, which is the work that I hired them for, right? I didn't hire them to do a timesheet, right? So I'm hiring them. I'm having conference calls with them. I'm seeing the work come through. So, that becomes how I assess their work. That becomes the guiding force for me to say, hey, Valerie, I see you're spending a lot of time on these reports each week. They look great, but let's shift your time around. I want you just spending about half the time on that and doing more of responding on the emails here. So you should be guiding, you should be having that conversation with your freelancer, but the work diary is there to help you see the time being charged to you. So here's an example of the fixed price contract. You can see here we have 6 milestones created. And again, the process is I fund escrow. You can see this one, number 4 here, is funded. And I only release funds after I've received this video and I approve it. Okay, so if I don't approve it, I go back to John and say, hey, John, this isn't what we discussed. Can you upload this again before I release this fund and then I release this milestone, and then I go fund the next one. This is what that work diary looks like. So you can see the screenshots every hour of Shelby's computer for the time that she's charging towards. So it's my responsibility each week to take a look at those screenshots and make sure that, yep, you know what, yeah, the time's being charged appropriately. You know, they're pausing the time card when they need to. They're removing their own screenshots and they forget to. And again, I have full visibility of what's being charged to me. For those hourly contracts, this is how that time gets charged. So Monday through Sunday, that time is getting captured by the desktop app. The next Monday, it gets charged in my payment method, but I have up until this Friday to review that time and dispute it if it wasn't spent on my job. But again, don't wait until this. If you're seeing right here that, hey, you know, the work is being done, but it's just okay, you know, I'm going to pick up the phone, or I'm going to send, you know, my freelancer a note on Tuesday and say, hey, you know, I saw on Monday it looked like you made some progress on the training. I think let's go ahead and get moving on that. So have dialogue with you. Don't wait until over here, because then it's a matter of, oh, well, you know, I don't want to pay you because it wasn't spent on my job, but then the freelancer says, oh, yes, it was, and then you run into many more concerns that you would have likely avoided if you just opened up that line of communication much earlier. Okay, you heard me talk about messages. This is where we want you keeping that dialogue. We want you keeping that conversation. So this is where you should be capturing notes. This is where you should be sending files to each other. This is where you can start video calls. You can see this little camera up here. The reason why we want you keeping that dialogue on Upwork is that because that's where that documentation can be held. If there's ever any issues with your project or with your freelancer, we can go in and take a look, and we can't do that when you're having your conversations on Skype or through email or on the phone, stuff like that. Now, it's fine to have those conversations. For some of you, it might just work better. But my advice is to always have somebody come back and document that, whether it's you or the freelancer. One come back here and say, hey, Scott, as we talked about, we're going to be uploading the file to Dropbox. Please send the location and add it here in the message area so we can have documentation of it. So it's easy as taking some notes, basically. At the end of a project, we're going to ask you to rate a freelancer. We're going to ask you how that experience went. Please complete this. It's a very important step. It's important for the freelancer because it helps build up their reputation on the site. But it's important for us as well. We want to see how that experience went. We want to have that record because it does factor into a freelancer's reputation over time. A few tips for you. Check with us if freelancers are asking for any financial account information or other private or sensitive information. They shouldn't be. Remember, you're not writing them checks. You're not sending them money from your PayPal to their PayPal. Your payments are going into Upwork first, right? So you're not sending that money directly to your freelancer. Don't pay early. Don't pay outside of Upwork. Don't take any freelancers off of the site for at least 2 years. And then consider asking your freelancers to sign a non-disclosure agreement during the interview or before your work begins, if that's important to you. I know some of you, like for me in my projects, it really doesn't matter, but for some clients to say, well, I don't want someone taking my mobile app idea and running with it, or I want to make sure that I can protect this logo in the future. You can always attach a non-disclosure agreement and ask your freelancer to sign that. Many of them do that all the time. Some takeaways, resources for you. Focus on that job description, that job post. It really matters. It's going to, again, the best freelancers are looking for the best work. So best work is something that you have a lot of control of as you set up your job post. Use the tools on the platform to evaluate those freelancers with their profiles, and then take a look at their portfolios, their proposals. You can consider doing an interview and even a test project if you have the time. You want to be using milestones and escrow to finish those payments. On hourly jobs, you want to be taking a look at that work diary. Make sure your freelancers using the desktop app to track their time, and then use that message area to keep track of that correspondence. This is our hiring headquarters. If you're thinking, what kind of a mobile store, I'm looking what is the latest as it relates to graphics. We can find a lot of that in headquarters. We also have a lot of videos in there that'll tell you how some of the features and functions work on Upwork. So check out upwork.com/hiring. And then if you have some questions I can't answer here, or just want to get a feel for what people talk about when they talk about the site, visit our community. We have a lot of other users there answering questions for each other, and I have a team that spends a lot of time there as well. So community.upwork.com. With that, I'll pause my screen and open it up for questions. So feel free to start asking questions, and we'll jump right into it. And Stephanie asks, how will I know when the work is done, and where will the files be posted? Okay, Stephanie, looks like you asked this one early on, so hopefully you got an answer to that. But for fixed price jobs, you want to definitely be using those milestones that I talked about to really just organize what deliverables are happening, right? And so when a milestone is done, the freelancer should be going to Upwork.com, going to that job in their account and saying, okay, Stephanie, milestone 1 is done. And then mark it as complete. They upload the file there. And then you can go to your message area to download those files into your account to find that information. So that's how you'll know when the work is done and when it's time for you to release escrow. Deepak says, what past projects or jobs have you had that is most like this one, and why? I'm not sure what you're asking there, Deepak. Sorry. And it looks like you went offline. Okay. Eric says, can you explain the difference between intermediate experience, $2 signs, and advanced experience, $3 signs? Great question, Eric. Yeah, so when you're posting your job, we're going to ask you, are you looking for someone who's more basic, intermediate, or expert? And that's just to get a rough gauge of their budget. So basic is going to be, again, there's really no, this might be in our help centers, support.upwork.com. But, lower end of the cost scale. I'm looking for someone who might have, but probably doesn't have the more expensive, where maybe your budget is a lot of experience doing this, an expert who, possibly more than likely is going to be charging a little bit more. So it helps set the stage for the types of freelancers that you're looking for. It helps to set their expectations for what the budget might be for this job. But keep in mind also, Eric, that that's not locking you into a cost. That's not locking you into the final project cost, because every proposal that you're getting is could be opening up the door for negotiation. Now, if you have a final budget in mind and you're not willing to budge from that, pick which of those different scales work best for you, but basic, intermediate, or expert. And then as you get proposals from freelancers, you can automatically qualify or disqualify them based on whether or not they're in line with your finite cost set. And following up on that last question, I believe it said is self-assess whether they're intermediate or advanced. A freelancer is able to change its designation of time. That's correct, Eric. So a freelancer will come in and say, I'm an expert in this, or I'm intermediate in this type of skill set, but they can change that at any point, and it definitely does not determine. A basic level freelancer in many cases, can. Janae says, can we use Skype for the communication all the way? You can, Janae, but I don't recommend it. I would try using our message area first because of the importance of keeping that documentation on the site. You can certainly use Skype, at various points in the job, and I do on occasion with some of mine. But then it just, it makes it a little bit more cumbersome because, again, I always recommend documenting the decisions, documenting the conversations in that message area. So I would strongly encourage you to start that. Stephanie says, if the freelancer is late, how best to deal with that and get a fixed date? I currently have this problem. I message the freelancer, but don't have a fixed new deadline from her. Hi, Stephanie. Yeah, so I would definitely try and reach out to your freelancers, set up a new date, whether you need to adjust a milestone or set a new one. But don't wait too long, is my advice. I will see clients on occasion say, the freelancer told me they were going to be late on this milestone. I gave them a second chance, but now they're not getting back to me. How long should I wait? Don't wait long. There's plenty of other really good freelancers out there who are not going to miss deadlines. And again, let's be honest and realistic about this. Sometimes deadlines have to move, right? Whether the scope of the work changed or there's unforeseen circumstances on either end, sometimes deadlines have to move. If it's because, a freelancer not meeting the deadlines on purpose, or, they're just not trying to get the work done on time, well, you know what, they're in over their heads. My advice to you as a client is reach out sooner rather than later to them. Try and understand what's going on. Move a deadline if you have to. But if they're continuing to miss it, or if they're not responding to you, you can always go to the project and cancel. Okay? And that's why I say don't wait too long, because you can cancel and go and find the next good freelancer and start working with them right away, rather than continuing to try to force something that's not working for you. And if you use the payment process that I talked about, milestones and escrow on fixed price jobs, or the time tracker, the desktop app on those hourly jobs, then there's no risk of your payment going away, right? Because if they didn't deliver the work on that fixed price job and you funded escrow, well, when you cancel the job, you'll be asking for a refund of that escrow payment for you. If it's an hourly job, if you cancel that job, let's say week 2, well, then you only pay them for week 1. Week 2, you might pay them for a couple of days if that's what they worked, but you're not then paying them on an ongoing basis. Lisa says, what do you do if project deliverable outcomes change mid-project? Is that common? It is. I wouldn't say it's common, but it does happen, Lisa. Typically on a fixed price job, it's a matter of you might have to cancel a milestone that was set up, like maybe the 4th milestone, and you're only on the 2nd one. You're realizing that, hey, this has changed a little bit. You can add some milestones, or you can cancel some and add some new ones. So it really, the step that I don't want to make sure you don't overlook is talking to the freelancer. Send them a message, talk about what's changed, see what they recommend, but you can certainly adjust milestones if it's a fixed price. It's not easy, unfortunately. We're working on making that easier, at least I thought it's certainly possible. Ali said, from my experience for a given type of job, there's always some base rate that I don't want to go below. If I go below this rate, there's a lot of time in this place. It's a good question, Ali. Oftentimes what I find, so Ali, for you as a client, if you're thinking of what is the bottom end of the cost for this type of work? What's that base rate? I'd go to look for jobs on Upwork. Go to job search as if you were a freelancer and say, WordPress programming or Adobe Photoshop, whatever you're hiring for, Ali, and you can compare. You can see, hey, some of these jobs go all the way down to $15 an hour. but most of them are around, let's say, $25 to $30 an hour. Just making this up. And that can be your gauge for, hey, what's that bottom rate that I should be thinking? Alex says, how can we get a good gauge as to what a particular project should cost? For example, building a website, especially if we're negotiating. Hey, Alex, I think I just answered that question. You know, definitely do some searching on Upwork. You know, the market is really full of, you know, what those budgets look like. And then remember, once you post that job, it's going to be a negotiation. So you'll find a lot of the freelancers will help to determine that. But yeah, go to search on jobs as if you were a freelancer. And that'll give you a good gauge for what other people are charging for this type of work. Eric says, I think you briefly touched on milestones, and or this might be self-help section on Upwork, but how do you use milestones to your advantage? Again, sorry if you already answered this. The way that I used it, just used it on my first job I just hired for, is set a milestone for a rough draft and remainder in escrow once we approve that final draft. Let's see, how do you use milestones to your advantage? Yeah, you know, Eric, I guess what I would say is definitely think of and consider and expect and see if you can do multiple milestones. Is the first answer is in terms of how you can use this process to your advantage, because you know, it'll give you a way to kind of step into the job. So whether it's a creative job, and by creative I'm talking about logos or designs or writing work, you know, drafts makes sense for milestones. First draft, second draft, final draft, right? We're talking about 3 milestones right there. Or outline, first draft, second draft, third draft, final draft. So that's one great way. You know, for non-creative work like you know, some more technical or IT work or consulting services, again, if it's a consultant type of work or you know, some type of strategy exercise, maybe it's, you know, conference calls are set up as milestones, or different strategy decks and the drafts of those are set up as milestones. So that's kind of the way I think about it. Is they're steps towards that final product. The final product being the final milestone is probably the best way to describe it. That can apply for both technical and creative other type of projects on Upwork. That's the best way to use it to your advantage. It is not a matter of I'm only going to fund the last milestone. You're funding every single milestone. So you're taking your final project, final deliverable, the final cost associated with that, and breaking it up into multiple milestones. So I'm taking that $1,000 that I'm spending for that logo, breaking it up into 4 different milestones. Or I'm taking that $500 that I'm doing for those 3 blog posts, splitting that up into 6 milestones, 2 milestones for each blog post. Okay, so then you know you kind of break it up that way. We are rating freelancers. Can they also rate us? And that's from Lisa. Yep, they will, Lisa. They'll be able to leave you feedback that can show up on your profile as well. So you know, that's really important. But the way that feedback works, Lisa, it's what we call double blind. So you won't see their feedback, they won't see yours until both of you leave it. We don't want one biasing the other. Okay. So you know, the things that clients are left comments about in terms of rating is, did they communicate and set expectations appropriately, and did they pay? That's really about it. So as long as you're taking care of those couple of things, you're going to be fine. I've noticed freelancers' rates vary between jobs. Are their hourly posted rates negotiable? That's from Nick. Absolutely. Every freelancer will have an hourly rate for this. So they might say, I do work for $30 an hour. I do work for $50 an hour. But that is just something that they have there to kind of be a starting point. I've rarely seen a freelancer who have a listed rate that they actually charge all the time. So every project's going to be a negotiation. They might say, yeah, I have a listed hourly rate of $65, but my last 2 projects I've done, one for $45 an hour, another one at $75 an hour. Does Upwork provide milestone templates for different jobs? We don't, Alex. One great way to ask, or place to ask, is in the community. So if you visit community.upwork.com, Go to that client section and say, hey, I'm looking to do this type of work. What kind of milestones would you think would be appropriate here? And you can get some great feedback that way. Okay, folks, I don't see any other questions coming. I just want to take a moment to thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. We're thrilled to have you bring in your projects here on Upwork. So hopefully some of the information we've shared here has been valuable. I think you're going to be really excited about the work that you get delivered and the freelancers that you work with. There's some very, very talented individuals who are just looking to do great work on the Upwork platforms. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck to you on your jobs, your projects here, and take care.